because the whole point is getting to our shared goal. So that's pretty much it. Are there any other thoughts or ideas on all of that?
I think one of the things we're going to have to be careful about is making sure that we give her some breathing space too. You know, this is a lot, and as you mentioned, Catherine, I remember how hard it was to get my arms around just who the department heads were, what the organization chart looks like, and that type of thing. So, I just think we need to make sure that she has some office time.
Yeah.
So.
The other thing too, Mr. Rhodes, I think you can help me better appreciate is we are still living in these COVID times. And we have great staff, but you're the board's go-to person. So I know whenever I have any question, not only about what we're doing for COVID, but all kinds of other questions, I email you and you vector it off to staff. Is there anything that you think we should be aware of in the coming weeks as we have parent employees who are coping with the transition of a new academic year starting? Gee, maybe if we're successful at our phase 1 metrics for 3 weeks, then school can start to think about their future plans for on-site assistance learning, and then in the future, hybrid learning. We might be able to contemplate phase 2, reopening, and what that might mean for all of us, so on and so forth. Any thoughts?
Just that it's ongoing process. And we've got, as you know, we did a survey of employees on daycare needs. And that's, we're moving forward with that. And we'll have hopefully the quantitative material out next week, early next week, if not this week. And then the quantitative, which will take a little longer to compile, available about a week after. And then the results of that then will be used to put together a proposal for how the county responds to that issue within our organization. That's one of the most important pieces that is going on right now, and it's related to schools and what happens with schools. So we have to hook those together in terms of how we respond. So we've got a staff committee that's been working on that, and we'll keep everybody informed as things move along. Again, we want to first off let everybody know what the results were and then work from there in terms of the proposals that will come forward. I think that's probably the biggest thing in that respect related to COVID, I think. The other, which I think you're well aware of, is the listening sessions that are being put together. And Elizabeth has those, I think, very well lined out and very, very thoroughly planned. And so that's moving forward as well. Those are probably the two most significant things right now that we're trying to keep moving. The third item is the budget review that we've told the board we will have in a couple of months after adoption. We've got a timeline that will be shared soon with the board. So you'll see what the timeline is. And that incorporates the community investment sessions that we're planning to have as well. So those are probably the most significant initiatives coming out of the CAO's office right at this point. And I've already, I had lunch with Tanya last week, introduced her to the staff in our office, showed her office so she knows where her office is, and then started my briefing with her on things. Then I've just today started the process of I will write out information that I will share with her in terms of projects, issues, everything that I feel I want to at least give her a start on and let her know what the pieces are and how they fit together so that she can go from there.
If I might, to have you play more of the devil's advocate for me on COVID. Um, I've been surprised through these months of COVID how occasionally I feel like COVID just kicks my butt. Uh, You know, the state of spread or the amount of things that need to happen to support a transition. For example, every now and then you've had to take care of temporary personnel rules. You know, you make it all seem so seamless, but I imagine it takes some time and energy. And I think that's the kind of thing that I'm wondering if you could just describe for us real briefly, because I want to be mindful of the fact that this is work that our new CAO will be doing as supported by good staff, but nonetheless, it's something that is pretty much invisible to us and seamless, but it's something the CAO has to do.
We're fortunate two ways there. One is that Tanya has been leading the COVID response in Boulder, so she comes on board with a good background in terms of that, and that will help immensely. I would be concerned if she was coming on board with very little experience, but she's very well versed in that. The second is the staff effort is just off the scale in terms of excellent. And my observation, you know, we keep thinking, oh, it's getting quiet, it's going away. And then actually what we're doing is we're having peaks and valleys. And we'll think it's calm, and right now it's one of those. And then all of a sudden, a new thing. You know, a few weeks ago, things was calm, and then the school stuff started. And you got to deal with that. Then you kind of get it. And we've kind of learned to not say things look okay, because we know what happens the next minute as they go. But that's really how it's been now. So if you will, it's easier to manage than the first few months when it was just constant everything. And we had started off with 3 times a week policy sessions to make sure we were taking care of the personnel rules, all of the issues that would arise. Those have gone down to twice a week now. Sia actually heads those and runs those for the staff. And that's how we keep ahead of the personnel rules, the temporary rules, all those kinds of things. So it's a group think tank, if you will, that keeps us moving through. So I think there's a lot of support for the CAO as they go through that. And so I don't think it would be as overwhelming as we might say. And of course, knock on wood, because tomorrow it will be. But I don't think it is.
Thank you for checkpointing that, because it was on my mind. And I know you and I check in a couple of times a week. And as there are these issues that come up and we discuss regionally, you know, through the tri-counties and go down, you've been very available to participate in those meetings. So I really appreciate how seamlessly it has gone. So thank you.
I think one of the things I'm concerned about is obviously the COVID situation and the ups and downs of the COVID situation, but seeing your forward this morning about the fire danger and the things that we're facing there made me realize that we've got additional critical issues that are seasonal in nature that we're going to be facing. So we need to have the flex in our knees, so to speak, to be able to take those hits when they come to.
Yes.
Any other thoughts or questions from commissioners? Great. Well, Commissioner Willie, I know you had asked for us to have this time to talk about the CAO onboarding and introductions. Is there anything else that you wanted to see or discuss, or any unmet needs?
No, I don't think so. I think this is pretty complete. I mean, this is, obviously, I just saw this, and I need to go back and do a little refresh on all of the projects or assignments that we've kind of listed over the next probably 12 months. But I think it's, as Commissioner Treese said, we need to let her enjoy the chair for a minute before we inundate her. But so yeah, I'm looking forward to the meeting I have with her that first week, and we'll continue to have conversation.
Great, great. All righty.
Do we know when she's physically moving?
I can't remember that date.
Her house is in your district, aren't you supposed to
No,
know this?
it's in Dix.
And Dick's,
Oh, is it?
No,
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I thought.
I believe it's next week sometime, but I don't remember the exact date.
And the reason I'm asking is that I would be willing to participate in a delivery of a pizza dinner or something like that, if anybody else would like to participate in that during the move-in time.
Yeah, her comment last week when we were in the interview meeting in between, take a break there, she was talking about the details of the closing and everything else coming, but she didn't, now that I think about it, she didn't give a date of when that closing was going to happen. So I don't know. I would assume it's pretty soon.
my problem is I talked to her about stuff like that, but I didn't write it down. And there's been so much else going on that I haven't tracked it. So, but I know they're looking forward to it.
I'll reach out and get a date so we know.
Great. Well, seeing none, then we can go to the next item for Sync Up. And that was with the rolling agenda and making sure we'll be successful with completing the land use ordinances before our deadline, the end of October. So I didn't have any particular laundry list of this, but in your staff rolling agenda meetings, have you gone through with Steve Roberts to make sure we've got everything programmed in so that if we end up having a public hearing, for example, on, I think the most hot one is the significant natural resources one. And
Yes, we've been mapping that out as we put the rolling calendar together, so that we're aware of when those spots are that we need to take into account as we plan. So we've been trying to keep it in track. Just as a side note, we're going to shift some meetings to accommodate some needs that we have. We normally would not have a meeting the end of September because it's a fifth Tuesday, I'm sorry, but we will use that day for a meeting. And then we will cancel the meeting on October the 6th so that there's no conflict with the board's participation in the CWS-related program, and shift everything around that. So we will be doing that. And that, what brought that to mind is we had to work with LUT on how we shifted the stuff that they were doing as well. So it seems to work for everybody to do that.
we'll also have the state of the county address that evening.
Correct.
Okay. All righty. Okay. Is there anything that Mr. Roberts wanted to highlight for us?
Stephen, Teresa,
hear
do you
me?
have anything?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. How is everyone?
Good.
Good. Just a couple of quick things. So as Steve mentioned, we do need to have a meeting on September 29th, and that's related to an anticipated engrossment for the significant natural resource ordinance. And we had initially scheduled that for October 6th, but we can back it up 1 week and make that happen on September 29th rather. And as you said, I think that's the ordinance that's probably going to generate the most interest, obviously, from the public. So we anticipate we'll definitely need to engross the ordinance, and we're still on schedule to have it adopted by the end of October.
Do we have any critical lead times through the rolling agenda with any of the ordinances that you want or need us to take care of? I see on September 22nd, we have 3 of them.
We actually are hoping that those 3 ordinances may be adopted on September 1st. Those are all relatively straightforward, or actually, I should back up. We anticipate the minor amendments ordinance and safe parking could potentially be adopted on the 1st, on their first readings. The UGB expansion ordinance, we anticipate we'll actually need to table that until next spring, while we wait for the appeals of the LCDC decision to play out.
Okay, I haven't been able to follow which one's which, because on the rolling agenda, they're only numbers. They don't have any title next to them. So I only know
Yeah.
we've got 865, 866, and 867, but
Yeah, they've been asked to correct that, so that will be updated when they get that information to Kathy.
so I guess
Yes.
I'm struggling. How do we adopt the findings on September 1, but then we don't adopt the ordinance until a public hearing number 2 on September 22nd?
So the schedule's a little bit confusing, and there's a lot of variability. So each ordinance, the specifics may vary. But if you adopt an ordinance at first hearing, then you can you'll adopt the findings the same day, and then we wouldn't need a subsequent second hearing. If you, for whatever reason, choose to continue the ordinance and not adopt it on the first hearing, the findings would be carried forward to the following agenda, and the ordinance and the findings then would potentially be adopted at that second hearing.
Oh, okay. I follow now. The
So there's gonna be
September
some flux in
22nd
the-
isn't in italics, so I thought that
Oh,
was
okay,
the date
okay.
certain stuff. Got it.
Yeah, we may still have some cleanup that we need to do there too as well.
Okay, I'm following the sequence.
Yeah, so and I apologize too about the ordinance numbers. We've been trying to get that corrected, but ordinance 865 is the UGB expansion areas. So that's the one that we anticipate will have you hold the public hearing on September 1st. And then our recommendation will be to continue the ordinance until after March 1st next year, which gives time for the appeals to play out potentially for the LCDC final order. And then in March, we'll open the hearing on whichever date that you select and move forward to, and we'll evaluate where we're at. We may have a need to continue the ordinance yet again to give some additional time for the appeals to play out.
Do we have a minimum number of commissioners that are needed to pass these ordinances?
Yes, you need a majority, so you need 3 commissioners. So if we have a quorum, we need everyone to vote in favor of an ordinance.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just, a majority vote.
But beyond that, we don't have a need for 4 of 5?
No.
Okay. There was a particular loophole that I'm remembering from my Metro days where we actually needed 5 of 7 versus just a majority, so.
I believe, Chair Harrington, that is related to housing authority where they is specific, where you need a minimum vote on that.
Oh, okay, thanks. See, our board clerk helps keep track of that stuff. Thank you, Kevin. Good. So it sounds like we're set for success then.
I believe so.
Great. Are there any other rolling agenda questions that commissioners have? No? Great. Well, it looks like we'll be able to get smoothly through the end of the year and all of our various topics, so that's great. It's been an adventuresome year in 2020 thus far, so it's nice to see we've got everything flowing. Okay, so the last item on our agenda today is to go over the material from the staff listening sessions. So don't know how you wanted to go over this. But this, they were pretty powerful listening sessions. And this is information that we have available to us now, as well as the workforce material that SIA sent us a couple of times from like July 14th or so, to better understand the needs of our employees. Do we have any external presenters or whatnot for this topic?
No, we do not. I think Eva may be available if you've got questions.
I'd asked, so how would this information be shared with the board? And so the suggestion was, we'll present it at a roundtable. So I wasn't anticipating my presenting it or anything like that.
No, so she may, let us find her. We'll get her here.
Okay, great.
We had it arranged, but
While we're waiting for that, I know Commissioner Scouten and myself were in one of these sessions, and you were in,
I was in the one on Friday.
and Jerry, Commissioner Willie, were you in one?
I don't believe so.
And how about Commissioner Rogers?
No, I think.
No,
it
I
was
don't believe, I don't recall being in it.
Okay, because it just, when I read through this, it resonated with me what I had heard, and I believe, I would guess that Commissioner Scouten feels the same way, that, you know, it was a good representation of what my experience was.
While we're waiting, I do have a question. It doesn't seem like there's a huge participation. What am I missing?
Why don't we wait till Eva comes to present? I think
Okay.
that's an appropriate question.
yes, it is.
They were voluntary. Huh?
Thank you, Sia.
I have another while we're waiting comment. So have we thought about putting together a resource center, resource group, something for parents with school-aged children? I'm wondering if there's anything we can do to, and I'm reflecting on the question today, Chair, about what do employers do? I'm thinking about the resources that we have through our library system, and some of the, just making sure that people know what the books are that kids are reading online, and the work that the library system does to put forward experiences for all levels of student, and if we communicate that directly with our employees.
Sia, you want to kind of brief them on what we're doing?
Just asking.
Yeah, it's a nice while we're waiting question, thank you. So we have pulled together an internal group that will be taking the results of the staff survey that you all saw. As those results come out, we will be looking at a number of strategies, because obviously one size won't fit all here.
Right.
Our parents are going to need, their situations are all going to be different. And so each of them will probably need different strategies that will help them with it. One of the things we are looking at is how to provide some online resources, referral services, those kinds of things. Our children, youth, and families folks are a particular resource. For that. So that is one of the strategies we are looking at, but we would continue to welcome ideas. So I know there was a forum you all were at a little earlier, so if ideas came out of that, we'd welcome that.
The thought that one of the school superintendents provided was a question of asking, what is your child's learning schedule? Right, which I think is a good question for every manager, especially to keep in mind, or supervisor. Then they also talked about, there were three things: a partnership with other providers for childcare. They've been working on that for their own employees, and I know CWS has worked on it. But I really loved Superintendent Scott's third point, and that is that the start of the new school year, the new academic year, tends to evoke a lot of enthusiasm, around the dinner table as a family unit. And he encouraged everyone to really seize on this opportunity. Just because we're in these COVID times and remote learning, comprehensive distance learning, don't let the opportunity go by. Seize it and use it and build around it.
I thought about pencil boxes and peaches and backpacks, and are we doing a school supply drive this year? I mean, that's something that groups have done in the past. I just wonder.
This year, at least the ads that I've seen, they're not asking for supplies, they're asking for cash.
Okay.
That makes sense. And we are, I appreciated the comment about working collaboratively. We have been having conversations with Diane Taniguchi-Dennis about how, in particular, Clean Water Services and Washington County can work together, but we all are facing the same things, so.
I know
Great.
my grandchildren, every year we go school shopping for new school clothes, and they ask me, now, are we still going to go? Yes, we are, even though we're not have to be there. Yes.
Well, thank you, Eva, for joining us. I'll just say, as one board member, I really appreciated what went into seizing the opportunity of the racial justice, social activism that is going on right now throughout our community. And you're building off of the training for transformation that HHS was using in order to provide the opportunity for all employees as well as the board to get together. We were all given notification of these events and flexible opportunities to choose to attend one. And I had asked our CAO when we might get, a report out for the board for us to consider and think about as we move ahead. And I think one of the things that he thought was pertinent is to make sure that we have the opportunity as a board, while he's still here, to discuss it. So that's really the objective of today, is to make sure that we have the opportunity to have a summary of the document that we've been provided, board discussion, including with Steve and any other members that he wants to bring in. So.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair and Commissioners, for taking the time to review this and for your participation. It was really important to do this. We certainly have, racial unrest in our community and in our employees. Our employees are part of the community. And it was, we have a lot of people who are struggling. So it was really important to give them an opportunity to come and voice their thoughts, their concerns in an open and safe forum. So we did bring in training for transformation. We had a strong desire to move quickly, and we had that contract already in place. So it was very helpful, and they did great work. So we were all good to go. So certainly the theme, the overall theme that we heard is that we have some employees who are hurting over things that have happened while working here. And, that was a hard but important thing to hear and to learn. We have to hear those comments, and we have to really listen with an empathetic ear and understand where they're coming from. These sessions were split by the consultant's directive into people of color and white allies. I think that was a really good option to give people a safe space. And it was really very insightful to hear what they had to say. So some of the themes we heard were that, like I was saying, there are people who are BIPOC employees who have experienced negative things while employed here. I do think it's important to remember we have, which is a fantastic thing, a lot of people who have a lot of tenure at the county. And some of these things have happened over time. And we don't expect them to forget. We don't expect them to get past it because it's their lived experience here. So we have to own that and recognize it and learn from it. And so we had to hear it and realize that although some things happened in the past, some things are still happening today. So the hard part is to figure out which of those things are happening now and how to address them, so we have more conversations to have with people. We really have to understand where they are. So what we heard was that in the past, people have been hurt. They're still feeling that way. That BIPOC employees do feel that they are expected to carry a lot of the equity work that had been done in the past and was still being done, and that they would like some more support in that area. We certainly also heard that Human Resources has had missteps, that they have done things in recruitment, in selection, in employee relations that some employees felt were not listening, that they were being penalized for bringing those things forward. So those are things we have to own and recognize and manage going forward. I'm going to pause there to see if anyone has any questions or thoughts. Okay. So we certainly did hear some things about recruitment, hiring, and retention of employees, that we have people who feel like our process does have barriers. Admittedly, right, there are certainly processes in public sector in general that have a barrier. It's interesting that, for example, civil service and our processes are set up to be equitable because they have scoring. You have to go by the scores. That's part of civil service, and that you have lists. You have to choose directly from the list in order according to scores. All those things are designed to be equitable. However, we have to recognize that as those things were set up long ago, and they still exist today, that some of those actually create barriers where if you don't have the right education or the right experience that you just haven't been able to get through your life, that does actually create a barrier to hire in those ways that we are required to do. So that's going to create, we've made some changes already. We can go into those if you'd like, but we also have to recognize we need to be even more creative and find new ways and better ways of getting around those barriers and be more welcoming and more inclusive. There certainly is a desire for training and culture change. We all know culture change doesn't happen quickly. This process, as we all learn and continue to grow, is never going to end, which is a good thing. We have a lot of work to do, and we will continue to do that. But part of that is going to be training at different levels, right? Training for managers, for supervisors, for employees, for leadership, for HR, for all of those people, because we all are involved in the culture change. So we have work to do, and we heard that from our employees. We heard that they were looking for coaching and how to grow. They want coaching for us as leaders and managers and supervisors on how to help them and help recognize our own racial bias, our own institutional bias in our organization, and how to manage those. Any comments or questions at that point? Okay. So the recommendations. There is a recommendation that we look to set a goal of having a 30% of our population, of our workforce, be Black, Indigenous, people of color, which is a great goal to set, and we need to work to get there. We did run numbers, and in the last 2 years, in 2000, 18, we had 19.1%, and then in a year, we got to 21%. So we are moving in the right direction. But we have a ways to go. 21% is not 30. So we have a ways to go. So that was certainly a recommendation to work on removing barriers and finding new ways to bring in and not just bring in, but engage and retain BIPOC employees, make them feel welcome, and that's part of inclusion. Is once people get here, we have to make sure that they're welcome and feel comfortable in that space. And developing mentorship programs, cross-training, professional development. That's crucial in keeping people here. We're really excited about our new position that we are opening up in a few weeks. That is the Training and Development Program Manager that will absolutely be have a lot of focus on getting those things together, mentorships, and all kinds of cross-development, cross-training, helping employees who are here develop and get the training and education that they need to move forward. So we're very excited about that. We're also working on putting together for the start of next fiscal year an internship program. And I've been working with actually T4T on how to utilize cultural fluency as a part of that requirement, so we can certainly reach out to people of color and help them learn. And if we're having people from our community in those internships, if we hire them, great. If they work somewhere else in the community, that's also great. So it's a win-win situation. So very excited about developing those programs. Certainly training, culture change, that's a big discussion. I don't have an exact answer for you today on how that's going to go, what that's going to look like. As we all know, we're bringing in a Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer, new county administrator. Those people will be key in helping that move forward on how we go forward with the training and the development and the culture change. Those positions, and as we add more to our Office of Equity and Inclusion, those positions are going to have a key role, key piece in helping us with that. And, looking certainly to the Board of Commissioners, I know you are supportive, and support from leadership is a strong recommendation. That we have that support and from top leadership in the organization as well. It's very important to have that and to make sure that we communicate that support continually and show it by supporting our programs as we move forward and helping us find new ways and better ways to really become an inclusive, welcoming organization. If you'd like, I can step away from this and talk a little bit about some of the efforts that are being made right now in recruitment and as far as making us more welcoming and inclusive.
Certainly, there's no right or wrong way to
Okay.
do this, so do what
Okay.
feels natural.
So we have, we've been working on, we have already implemented actually a new system where we are not, when we have managers looking at applications, we cover up the names and the addresses. Because those are two factors that can certainly have an impact on how people see. There's lots of research that shows people with ethnic sounding names sometimes get less looks. We don't want to stigmatize people by where they live. So we have both of those already in place. We are strongly advocating for several years now that each department, when they do interviews, has a diverse interview panel. We have also just removed, on our scoring sheets, we had suggestions to look for this type of answer and watch out for this type of answer. We have completely removed the watch out for and changed the look for. We don't want to be, we don't want to be so specific that we don't give people to have different approaches, different cultures, different ways of answering questions, different ideas. We felt like that was very restrictive. We're also working very soon, we will be adding to every class specification a essential job function that relates to cultural competence, and the the understanding that every position in our organization is expected to be welcoming, to create a culture of acceptance, to include that as part of a class spec allows us to help with interviews, with job postings, with all of the external communication and internal communication. And then when you get to performance management, you have the ability to hold people accountable. What are you doing as a supervisor to promote diversity and inclusion and equity in your part of the organization? It's incredibly important to have that in there. So we're making those moves even as we speak.
I have a question.
Sure.
You know, one of the things that we heard in the meeting and also was presented here is that our current BIPOC population is expected to carry a lot of weight when it comes to addressing, helping us move through this transition time into a point where we are more diverse. What are some of your thoughts? And what struck me is that when you said our interviewing committees, we're trying to make them as diverse, and that's one more way that we put responsibility, again, onto our employees that represent those diversity pieces. So what are we doing? Are there thoughts about how we not compensate, but how we recognize, support, encourage, thank our populations that do give us a perspective that we wouldn't have otherwise?
Yeah, no, I hear your question. It's a good question. So it's important to not only, I think it's really important not to just have someone on a panel and just to have them there, right? We need to acknowledge that they are there for a very specific reason and help them understand the value that they're bringing. But also, I understand your question is that then is there extra, compensation beyond a thank you? That's a tough question, and we haven't tackled that yet. It is something that was suggested, that people be compensated for work around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that's a tough one. I don't have the answer for that today.
And, my question wasn't, just pointed at compensation in a dollars and cents way, but do we do things like making sure that they are not having to do this work on top of work that they're doing
Right.
during the days, that they're, that they're not overly burdened by this approach?
Absolutely, and that's leadership support. We need to make sure that, it's a great experience to be on an interview panel and to have those exposures on how this process actually works. And so we need to make sure we give people the proper training and the ability to have that training and to be there and be part of the interview process without overloading them back at their regular work site. So that's going to be leadership and supervisor support to allow people who want to do that and to absolutely be part of it. So we are going, it certainly is part of the HR responsibilities to help work with those supervisors to explain how important it is that people have an opportunity. It's a growth opportunity is how I see it. It's a development opportunity to really be part of those. So yes, we need to make sure that we have support. And that has been an issue. There are people around the county who we tend to use. So we tend to tap people who we know have an interest and a desire to be part of interview panels. We need to expand that. Who is in those groups of people who are trained and ready to be part of interview panels?
One of the, Commissioner Trees was asking questions about, support from leadership. And one of the items listed on page 4 that I have a question about, or I'd like to better understand, is item number 2.
Item number 2.
With regard to centering BIPOC experiences. And I was wondering, is that related to the form of work and the work environment, or could you expand a little bit more about that?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So a lot of times, if people have questions about how they should respond to something, or what should I do in this situation, they will go to people of color and say, oh, we have this situation, what do you think I should do? What do you, that kind of a thing. And so there's a burden there, right? When I'm always, if you're imagining, I'm always the person they ask about this, find somebody else. So yeah, we have to recognize that we're doing that. And that's we did hear that in the listening sessions, that people feel like, oh, wow, I'm the only, for example, I'm the only Latinx person at this work group, and every time an issue comes up about race, someone asks me how I'm supposed to handle it. I don't know, I'm not an expert. So they feel this heavy responsibility and burden. We need to make sure that the way we can handle that is to find who are the people who want to be asked those questions, make sure people who, there's a variety of people we can access outside our work group, outside our department, right? And I'm hoping that the Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer will also be a resource and help with that, and they can help us identify champions around the county who could be asked those questions, so we're not so heavily relying on people just in a certain work group. Yeah. It's a tough burden, right, to always be the expert. Yeah. Other questions, or? One of the things I wanted to highlight is we did have really good response, and you can see in the charts, the participation charts. We could have had more, right? It's a process. And I do think that the fact that due to COVID, they had to be online is good and bad. Some people felt the ability to be there and listen and not be so visible. But at the same time, I think some people might have come if they didn't have to be online. And it's also hard sometimes to insert yourself in those calls that are on Zoom where you can't see somebody who's leaning in or someone who looks like they have something to add. And you don't want to call on people because you don't know from Zoom if they're interested or they want to participate. So it does create a problem in those situations. I do think we, moving forward, we definitely want to look at smaller groups that can talk and share, because, in a smaller setting, that also helps. We'd also very much like to find people to help us facilitate these from within our county. We have some amazing employees here who can help us do that. And certainly we know that you will get more participation in certain situations where you have internal people who you can relate to and form a connection with that are part of your organization. So that's part of moving forward.
I know Commissioner Rogers had a question earlier
Oh.
before you had a chance to get here. Commissioner Rogers, would you like to pose your question to Eva?
Thank you. I actually have a couple, but before I get into them, tell me what T for team stands for.
Training for transformation.
Thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate that. I have two questions. I can ask the one, though, the chair now just mentioned. That was, it looked like a lot of participation when you have a large population like we have in the employee base. I understand it was voluntary, but what would have created maybe some more contributions from other folks? I mean, what would have you done differently?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think when you start out with something like this, there's always a little bit of hesitancy from employees as they're unsure of the situation. I think we will see more participation as we move forward with these sessions. I think sometimes it's just understanding that it is truly a safe place. And you can see from this report that there was no names used, no one was identified as having been there. There was certainly some concern around that, and we did hear that it's hard to feel comfortable sharing, and this is a very personal subject for people in any way you look at it, and no matter where you are, and it's hard to come in and share for some people. So I think moving forward, that's one of the reasons I'd like to use smaller groups, have that option, and also large groups, and just have different types of ways to meet. I'm hoping someday we can get back together in person. But even so, maybe still have things online where you have different options so people are more comfortable sharing the way they feel comfortable sharing. I think that would be very helpful. And also, the numbers do not reflect the sheriff's office, who is also working with Training for Transformation in their own work groups. They have their own series of sessions that they're doing, so these numbers don't include our largest office and department. Did that answer your question, Commissioner?
It did, thank you.
Okay. The rest of this presentation, or the report you got, a lot of it talks about what we did, the code of care that we offered to everyone, and then we had journaling, we had the BIPOC sessions, we had the white ally sessions, and then we had the sessions, as you know, with leadership. I think those were really, people really enjoyed that, having an opportunity to talk to you as commissioners and the department directors. Those were designed very specifically as an opportunity. When we heard before we started that people really wanted an opportunity to talk to leadership and tell them what they were seeing and what they were feeling. I really appreciated everyone's involvement on both sides of that, of being someone who was sharing how they felt, and then, you know, all of you and our department directors and leaders listening and being really open to it. I thought that was just a fantastic session. And again, you know, those are things we needed to hear. And we do need to know how people are feeling and take it in and listen and then find out how we can help, how we can move forward in a really positive way. And it's a long process, and we're ready to be on that process. We're ready for that journey and looking forward to it, so. Were there other things you wanted me to cover specifically?
Not per se. From my standpoint, I really appreciated getting the comments as well and reading through those. So I'll just contribute some things that I noted for myself. The theme that we're of a growth mindset. I know continuous improvement is the phrase I tend to use, but I really appreciated that. On page 16, it noted we have a productivity culture, and that's really been the focus of the agency for a long, long time, as opposed to other needs. Really, it was, I thought, posed in a way that says at the expense of other very important needs, and now's a good time to reflect on that over as we shift shift to our community serving culture over the next few years. Then there were some really useful questions. And, you know, like this whole topic, some that are meant to be uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
Is my white fragility showing? Is one of them. Is racism in operation here? But I really liked how the document also came across as, how do we create an anti-racist ethic and practice that in the workplace? I thought that was really well done.
I totally agree. And we need to make sure people know you have to be anti-racist. It's not about being neutral. We need to promote that anti-racist is what we need to be, right? And always listening, always learning. I heard last week the phrase, instead of cultural competence, cultural fluency. And I absolutely loved that concept, because that talks about the fact that we all have things to learn and that growth mindset, and that if we have to exercise those muscles to continually learn and continually use them. And we certainly also have to recognize that we have all sorts of diversity in our organization. We have the spectrum of a lot of different types of diversity, and a lot of those cross over into race. And so we need to work on our overall diversity program, and the program being embedded into our culture. It should be something to get to a point where we're comfortable always, as much as we can, talking about all types of equity issues, race, sexual orientation, gender, disability. We need to get to a point where we understand there's so much value in a diverse organization, and how we include those people, all people, in those discussions is so critically valuable to serve our community. We are here to serve the community, which is just as diverse or more diverse than our organization right now, and we need to make sure that we're here to serve the community in the best way possible. And that includes recognizing and honoring the diverse workforce we have, treating them equitably, and giving them opportunities.
One thing that I wondered about, and maybe Commissioner Treese and Commissioner Scouten, you may be able to help me better understand, is the session that I participated in was this one of 159 people. And so I don't know if there was a difference in the interactivity compared to, I think the one you guys were in, was that the middle management one, or the one, do you remember what day you were in?
It was the leadership, the middle management was simply middle managers, people who were not who supervised. Anyone who supervised was eligible to attend the middle management session. So the leadership sessions, we had two, one with our two commissioners, and then one with the department directors, where you were at also, Chair, because you were, I think, on vacation for the first one.
Yeah, was there a difference in I mean, they went over the same material, but was there a difference of interactivity in any way?
I think it's fair to say there was, because when they're talking to department directors as well as to you, those are people who have, frankly, just the boots on the ground in a more real sense. So I think there was more things they'd like to see. I think the communication with both of you, the commissioner, was, I think, a higher level, more how much they want your support, and they wanted you to hear the things that had gone wrong in the past. And that came out in both, but I think even more so in your session, where just people just really wanted to explain the pain that they were feeling and carrying around still. I think it was, like I said, it was incredibly important to hear and to understand that.
And in our group, just, it was my impression that they were speaking to, what kind of moved me, if you will, is that they were speaking to each other as well as to us. And there was a lot of support for when someone would make a comment about their experience. There was a strong amount of support for being brave, for taking that step, for moving forward. And I was just very impressed with the peer aspect of what went on in our session. The other thing that, for me, that I continue to learn and need to learn more about is what is the scope of microaggressions? How does that work for people? What are the experiences and the lens through which different people experience those things? And that was very eye-opening for me, was the concept of microaggressions, and how it isn't just a one-time situation. It's just this loading and loading and loading and loading. So it was a very powerful experience for me. There's no question about it. And I think in the session, I think I made a comment to, you're supposed to try to learn to be comfortable with your discomfort. And I said, well, I'm not feeling, there's discomfort in learning how to feel comfortable with my discomfort. I'm working through this. But it's hard to hear these things and recognize that what your place in the situation in the problem is, and understanding, what constitutes unintentional support of a negative situation. I think that's what I'm trying to say. So it was powerful.
Yeah, I think thank you for bringing up the microaggression piece. And, really the microaggression piece really spoke to me. What I heard was that's the point where we need manager and supervisor training, right? Because we are an organization where we like to be nice to each other. And part of being nice creates a space for microaggressions because we don't want to bring it up. We don't want to call somebody out, even if we see a microaggression, because we tend to be so nice that we're not leaving space for that on occasion. So getting supervisors and managers comfortable with being uncomfortable and saying, so what I just heard hit me wrong. How did you feel about it, Joe? To somebody else in the room, right? So getting used to that and getting comfortable with that, it was going to help tremendously to help. So again, it's that burden of BIPOC people always having to call things out. If we can get our managers and supervisors trained and comfortable to help with that process and be open to it, and when someone comes to you and says, hey, I experienced a microaggression, understanding what that means and how it can build up and being comfortable with addressing it right away. I think those things that's going to help really change our culture.
And it almost feels to me like the terminology microaggression is inappropriate. It's more subtle aggression. And the reason I say that is micro makes it sound small, whereas subtle makes it, from my perspective, it's more sliding something in when you probably shouldn't.
No, that's a good point. Yeah, it's hard. And helping people understand those things. And a big training piece is going to be helping our employees who are not BIPOC, helping our white employees understand what it means to have white privilege, and what that looks like. And it's not an insult, and it's not that you're less than or you didn't have a hard time. There's a great quote that I saw that said, white privilege does not mean your life wasn't hard. It means the color of your skin wasn't the cause. And that's hard to learn, right? And it's something that we need to work towards and help people understand that. Like I said, we all have things to learn. I learn things every day about race relations and how we can make things better for BIPOC employees and all of our employees. And so it is a learning process and being open to that and helping our employees be open and be ready to learn and embrace those opportunities. I do want to say we have a human resources team that I know carries a lot of a burden of things that have happened in the past and things that we have to recognize are still going on today. I just want you to know, they are so ready and willing to learn and listen and help. They are so excited about the changes they're already making. It was important for us to hear in the HR team about how things are going for some of our employees, and that's not what anybody on that team wants. They are a great group of people. The longest tenure of that group is 8 years. We have a number of people who haven't even been there a year. And right now, 40% of them are Black, Indigenous people of color. So every work group has people in it that are part of that community. They are so willing to learn and move forward and really looking forward to the opportunity. So just wanted to let you know.
Commissioner Rogers, you mentioned you might have a couple of questions. Do you have any other questions or comments you want to contribute with your colleagues?
Yes, please. In regard to the 30%, I looked at it as aspirational. I have no problem with that. I think that's more reflective, obviously, of our population. But I don't really like artificial numbers. I would hope that that means that we have qualified people regardless of skin tone, gender, sexual orientation. So if we had people of color being 70%, that doesn't bother me at all. I think it would speak well for our organization if they indeed have the same colors, but I mean the same credentials. But we don't mention being aspirational. It looks like it's a fixed number. And I don't think that should be a fixed number. If it's 20%, because that was what the qualifications were, not great, but okay, we'll live with that. If it's 50 or 70% because of qualifications, that's fine too. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. So, any kind of, we're never going to hire someone because of the color of their skin. That's racism any way you look at it. What we have to do is work hard to make sure our organization is welcoming and inclusive of people. And that's the first step, because we need people to want to join our organization, all people, including people of color, right? That's really important. We need to reduce the barriers to entry. We need to make sure we educate our people who are going through the hiring interview process, the selection process. But we do certainly want to hire great people, and the way we do that is step back and make sure that we have a good pool of candidates who are diverse. The 30% is not actually not a random number. That comes from studies that show that if you're in a group of 30% or more of any type of diversity, you are more comfortable, you are in a place where you feel more included, you feel like you have a voice, and you do have a louder voice. So even just using men and women, if you're in a room when it's 100 people and there's 2 women, you're going to feel less comfortable as a female, potentially, feeling like you have a voice, like you're equal. If there's at least 30 of 100 in a room, the idea is that you see people like you, you're more comfortable, you're more apt to feel at ease. And that's where that 30% comes from. And it's a goal to have 30% of our applicants, be people of color, 30% of our workforce. It doesn't mean that we can't move forward with a hiring if we don't have it. It means we need to take a step back and think about how we do better, how we continually move on that spectrum. How do we attract and retain more people who reflect our community? How do we do that? So the 30% is a goal for sure, and it would be fantastic to get to that point, and that's what we have to work towards. And that's also a measure of how we can see how far we're coming. We can use that as a very quantifiable way of gauging it. A lot of work in diversity is hard to quantify, so I think it's good to have some numbers, some data that we can work off of.
Any other thoughts, Commissioner?
No, thank you. I think that's well said. As long as we understand that we're not diminishing our requirements for excellence, and that we're not arbitrarily putting some number that we're just hitched to that. So if we have some great candidates and we're already at 30%, we wouldn't consider them because that's some quota. To me, that's silly. And you said that very well. I like the way you said it much better than I.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question that I think is more directed at the CAO, and it's sort of a fluid question, so bear with me here. Feedback is a gift, and I have read this report in that light. I also appreciated having the opportunity to participate as well. There are some recommendations here that you've talked about, brought to life in terms of are already underway, or we have resources coming through our Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer, the hiring of a new HR director, officer, whatever, manager. I really want to say thank you as well to you, Eva, and to Jack in stepping into your new roles with support services and all that that portfolio has provided. It's been really wonderful. I'm wondering, at what point do we come back over between now and, say, the end of the year or so, to talk more about what we should consider doing through our policy directions and our investment decisions? I remind myself that we've already charted out, given direction for our CAO to work with the Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer to come up with a work plan and whatnot. So, have we already laid the groundwork for that to happen, or is there anything we need to be pondering in the months ahead?
I think the board actually laid the groundwork very well for that in the equity resolution and in your goals for the new county administrator. But if you recall, the equity resolution set some timeframes for plans, programs, and everything to be put in place and come back for board review. So I think we've already got the structure. We just need the people now, and we're almost there with that. So.
Well, for myself, I remember at Metro, and I've seen it here through the toolkit, the racial equity toolkit for the EOC, that to go through decision-making with a racial equity lens involves recognizing who is the decision, who are the folks who may be affected by the decision, and are there any groups that you haven't contemplated, as well as who is involved with this decision-making, and have you included the historic and underserved community members in setting about that? It's, to put it differently, it's who's around the table in making that decision. And so I'm looking forward, as we have these new strategic staff folks on board, to help us have a tool to utilize in our subsequent policymaking and investment decision-making so that we can effectuate doing our work with a racial equity lens.
As am I.
Any other comments or questions from commissioners? Great.
Great. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Really appreciate it. No problem. Okay, was there anything else that commissioners wanted to go over?
Chair Harrington,
Yeah?
I have an update. Tanya is here,
Oh.
not here physically, but here in Oregon.
Washington County.
And her move-in day is actually tomorrow.
Great.
So, yes, she said the moving van shows up tomorrow. They had a little kerfuffle with their closing, but they got that ironed out, and so tomorrow's the day.
Oh. What's the weather going to be like tomorrow? A little warmer than today, but not as hot as Saturday.
But not the Saturday heat, yeah.
Yeah. So our new CAO starts on Monday, the 24th, and our September 3rd roundtable is set up for us to have some really good conversations around our work together. Then the October roundtable is going to be folded into part of our common experience as part of the WEFTEC conference. So I think that'll be a lot of fun. We'll be virtually attending this year, and Diane and her team are putting together a roster of things for us. And then our November roundtable will be oriented much like we did last fall as well, taking stock of our initiatives for this year, how we've done on those, and revisiting what we're expecting in 2021, further populating that, and then looking out ahead into 2022. So all that you see reflected in the rolling agenda as well. And who knows what kind of rest of the year we're going to have with COVID. You know, Thanksgiving's going to be perhaps different this year as fewer people are traveling through airports, and, you know, who knows, holiday seasons may be celebrated a little bit differently as well. So, but I think we're all very well positioned no matter what happens. Great. Anything else, colleagues? Terrific. So seeing none, that'll be it for today's roundtable. Thank you.